My family gave my sister a $13,000 cruise and handed me a $2 lottery ticket with a smirk. 3 days later, I won $100 million, the video call where I told them did not go how they expected. My mother pressed the lottery ticket into my hand in front of 30 relatives and smiled. This is all that's appropriate for your situation, Audrey. The room was still applauding my sister Vivian. Vivian, who had just torn the gold ribbon off a box the size of a small suitcase and pulled out a Caribbean cruise package. 7 days, 2 passengers, 4 ports, $3,000 per person. All inclusive, $13,000. My mother had made a small speech about how Vivian and Marcus had had such a hard year and deserved something beautiful, and 30 people had agreed by nodding and smiling and lifting their glasses. The ticket in my hand was a $2 scratch-off, the kind you buy at a gas station, the kind you give a child when you want them to feel included without spending anything. My brother-in-law Marcus leaned back in his chair with the particular ease of a man who had never once been uncertain of his own welcome. "Luck's a long shot," he said, "when you don't have the brains to back it up." 28 of the 30 people in that room laughed. I smiled. I said thank you. I folded the ticket into my jacket pocket, hugged my grandmother, who was sitting slightly apart from everyone else, in the chair near the window, the one she liked because it faced the yard, and I went home. 3 days later, I checked the numbers. I checked them twice, then a third time. Then I put my phone down on the kitchen table and sat completely still for 4 minutes and 11 seconds. I know because the clock on the microwave was directly in my line of sight, and I watched it, while my brain organized the information into something it could hold. All 6 numbers matched. $100 million. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't call anyone. I Googled lottery winner what to do first. And then, from somewhere in the back of my memory, I heard my grandmother's voice. At Christmas dinner, leaning across the table to me while my mother was occupied with Vivian's gift presentation, her hand on my arm, her voice low and deliberate, the way she said things she needed me to keep. "Call Thomas Smith this week, Audrey, before anything else. You hear me?" My mother had steered her away before I could ask why. I had assumed it was holiday confusion. My grandmother was 81, and since her fall in October, she had been on medication that sometimes made the edges of things soft. I pulled up the contacts on my phone. Thomas Smith. I had his number because my grandmother had given it to me 2 years ago at a different family dinner, slipped on a piece of paper, folded small, the way she passed things when she didn't want anyone to see. I had saved it and never called it because I didn't understand why I had it. I called it now. He answered on the second ring. "Let me tell you about my family before I tell you what Thomas Smith had been holding for me, because the architecture of this story requires you to understand the building before you see it come down. My parents, Robert and Carol Stanton of Wilmington, Delaware, had 2 daughters. Vivian, 4 years older than me, who had arrived in adulthood already knowing what she deserved and had spent the following 20 years collecting it. And me, Audrey, the one my mother introduced at family gatherings with a slight pause before the introduction. The pause that said she was searching for the right framing and settling for vague. And Audrey is doing her thing up in Philadelphia. My thing in Philadelphia was grant writing for a network of community health clinics. It was not glamorous. It was not the kind of job that produced interesting dinner party conversation. It paid $52,000 a year, which in Philadelphia was not nothing, and also was not a Caribbean cruise. I had a studio apartment and a good coat and a collection of plants that I was consistently almost but not quite killing, and I had been happy enough with this, genuinely, actually happy enough, until I came home for family events and was reminded, through the specific social mechanics of my family, that happy enough was not the same as enough. The lottery ticket was not the first time. It was the most public, and Marcus's comment had the most witnesses, but the pattern had been running for years. The birthday dinner, where my parents took Vivian and Marcus to a restaurant I had been told was a surprise, and arrived to find had been planned for a party of 4. The holiday photo shoot my mother had organized at a photographer's studio, which I found out about from a cousin who had seen the photos on Facebook. The loan my parents had given Vivian and Marcus for their kitchen renovation, $25,000, no interest, terms TBD, while telling me they couldn't help with my car repair. I had noticed all of this the way you notice a draft in a room, aware of it, adjusting to it, not yet ready to trace it to its source. My grandmother had noticed it differently. She had been noticing it for years, from her chair near the window, with the particular clear-eyed attention of a woman who had spent 81 years watching people and had stopped being fooled by the ones who thought her age made her unobservant. She'd also been watching other things involving my father and Marcus, things she had apparently decided to do something about 2 years ago, when she had slipped a phone number on a folded piece of paper across a dinner table. Thomas Smith had been an estate and trust attorney for 26 years. His office was in a building in downtown Wilmington that smelled like old carpet and good coffee, and he had the particular manner of a man who dealt in other people's complicated situations and had long since stopped being surprised by any of them. He had been waiting for my call for 2 years. "Your grandmother came to me in January," he said, after I had explained who I was and why I was calling. "She said she wanted to set up a protected trust for you, and she wanted it done before something happened that made it impossible to do." He paused. She was very clear about the urgency. "What kind of trust?" I said. "Irrevocable discretionary trust. $500,000, funded from her own savings account, placed in your name specifically." He paused again, in the way he paused when he was deciding how to say something. "She said she didn't trust your mother not to redirect it if it went through normal channels." Her words. I sat down. "She chose you," Thomas said, "because in 60 years of watching this family, you were the only one who never asked her for anything." I looked at my kitchen clock, the microwave still showing the time, the same clock I had stared at 4 minutes ago while the lottery numbers rearranged my life. "You said there was more," I said. "I don't know how I knew. I just knew." "Yes," Thomas Thomas said. He was quiet for a moment. 6 months ago, while your grandmother was in the hospital after her fall, a deed was processed. Her house was used as collateral on a loan of $180,000. The loan was between your father and your brother-in-law Marcus, 32% interest. The kitchen was very quiet. The deed, I said. Her signature is on the deed as collateral authorization, Thomas said. Dated October 14th. I have the hospital records for that week. Your grandmother was on a fentanyl patch and 2 other pain medications. She had an episode of acute confusion documented in the nursing notes on October 12th. She told a nurse she didn't know what year it was. Something cold moved through my chest. She signed away her house, I said, while she was on fentanyl. While she was on fentanyl and couldn't tell a nurse what year it was, Thomas said. Yes, they made her do that. The signature is on the document. The timeline is what it is. Thomas's voice was careful and precise. I have a forensic document examiner who has reviewed the signature. Her signature from documents signed before the hospitalization is notably different in character from the October 14th document. Shakier, inconsistent pressure, the kind of variation consistent with impaired motor control. I thought about Thanksgiving, about slipping away from the living room after dinner to use the bathroom and passing my father's study with the door slightly open, about stopping, about going in. I had taken photographs of every document on that desk, with my phone, in the dark, because something had made me. I had not been sure what I was looking at. I had just known I was looking at something. I have photographs, I said, of documents on my father's desk from Thanksgiving. Thomas was quiet for exactly 2 seconds. Send them to me tonight, he said. I spent the following 2 weeks preparing while my family sailed to Barbados. They had left December 27th, the day after they booked the cruise in the first place. Vivian squealing about packing, Marcus quiet and satisfied in the way he was when something had gone according to plan. My parents waving from the departure photos my mother posted to Facebook with the caption, "Making memories with our beautiful family." No Audrey in the photo. I had not been invited. That was fine. I needed the 2 weeks. I called Thomas every other day. He had retained Dr. Patricia Okafor, forensic document examination, 28 years in practice, had testified in over 200 proceedings, to produce a formal opinion on my grandmother's signature. He had also connected me with a financial elder abuse specialist named Raymond Chu, a licensed clinical social worker with 18 years in adult protective services, who reviewed the timeline, the medical records, and the loan documentation, and wrote a 12-page analysis. I formed an LLC through a registered agent in New Mexico, a standard anonymizing step for lottery winners, Thomas had explained, designed to allow me to claim the prize without my name becoming public. The LLC claimed the winnings. The winnings, after the federal and state tax withholding on the lump sum election, became $58.7 million in a trust account. I was not going to tell my family about the money until I was ready to tell them everything. I also spent those 2 weeks going through the photographs from my father's desk. The loan agreement was there, the deed, a promissory note, and one more thing, a folder of printed email exchanges between Marcus and a woman named Diana, identified in the email signatures as his executive assistant at his commercial property firm. Quick pause. If you want more stories like this in better quality, my Spotify's linked in the description. I read through them carefully, because I read everything carefully, and by the 3rd page I had stopped breathing in the normal way. Marcus had been planning to leave Vivian, not recently, for at least 8 months based on the email timestamps. The emails were detailed in the specific way that emails between people who believe they're being discreet are detailed, explicit about timelines, about money, about what Marcus intended to take and what he intended to leave behind. Once the house deal closes, I'm out. She served her purpose. Divorce papers are already drafted. The house deal was my grandmother's house. Marcus had co-signed a $180,000 loan using my grandmother's home as collateral while she was medicated and confused, and he had been planning to divorce my sister and use his share of the proceeds to fund his exit. He had used Vivian to get access to my grandmother. He had used my grandmother to fund his escape from Vivian. And my father, who had either been complicit or had been used in turn, and I was not entirely certain which, had signed his name to a loan document next to Marcus's. I saved everything to a secure cloud folder with a password Thomas had helped me generate. Then I opened the family group chat. I typed, "Video call tonight at 8 p.m. Everyone needs to be present. Something important to share." The confirmations came within 60 seconds. Mom, of course, sweetheart. Everything okay? Dad, we'll be there. Vivian, OMG, finally. We heard something about a lottery? Marcus. I read those messages. I put my phone down. I went for a walk. They were all on screen at exactly 8 p.m. My mother had made sure of that because she had clearly decided this was the call where I announced I had won something and was sharing it, and she was not going to miss a second of it. The lounge behind them was all warm light and tropical evening, the kind of backdrop that photographs like a vacation advertisement. My mother in a sundress, color in her cheeks from the sun. My father with a rum drink he was cradling loosely, relaxed in the particular way men are relaxed when they believe they are about to receive something. Vivian tanned and bright-eyed, leaning toward the screen with her elbows on the table. Marcus slightly apart, arms crossed, the way he sat when he was calculating rather than participating. Kiddo, my father said. He only called me kiddo when he wanted something. We heard something about a lottery ticket. I looked at them, all 4 of them. The tropical lounge, the rum drink, the 30 relatives from 2 weeks ago, still an echo in my memory. The laughter, Marcus's voice. Luck's a long shot when you don't have the brains to back it up. I won, I said. The silence lasted exactly 3 seconds. I counted. Then everyone spoke at once. My mother made a sound that was half laugh, half cry. My father set down his drink too fast and it sloshed. Vivian said, "Oh my God," twice in a row. Marcus uncrossed his arms and leaned forward for the first time in the call. I let them exhaust themselves. It took about 90 seconds. When the noise settled into an expectant expectant quiet, the quiet of people waiting for a number. I shared my screen. $100 million, I said. Net after taxes, approximately $58.7 million. My mother put her hand over her mouth. I've spent the past 2 weeks doing some things I want to tell you about. I clicked to the first document. This is a loan agreement between Dad and Marcus, $180,000, 32% interest. My father's face went the specific white of someone whose blood has just redirected itself somewhere else entirely. This is the deed to Grandma's house, listed as collateral on that loan. Signed October 14th. I clicked to the next document. I have the hospital records from that week. Grandma was on a fentanyl patch and 2 other pain medications. She had a documented acute confusion episode on October 12th. She told a nurse she didn't know what year it was. I paused. Dr. Patricia Okafor, forensic document examiner, 28 years in practice, has reviewed the signature on this deed and provided a written opinion that it is inconsistent with your mother's established signature characteristics and consistent with impaired motor control. My mother's mouth was open. No sound. You made her sign away her house, I said, looking at my father, while she was on fentanyl and didn't know what year it was. Audrey, my father started. I'm not finished. I clicked again. These are 8 months of emails between Marcus and his executive assistant, Diana. I'll read one. I looked at the screen. Vivian was frowning slightly, the specific frown of someone who doesn't yet understand what she's about to understand. I read it. Once the house deal closes, I'm out. She served her purpose. Divorce papers are already drafted. The silence was different this time. Vivian turned to look at Marcus. He stood up. He grabbed his phone. He walked out of frame. Marcus! Vivian's voice cracked in a way I had never heard her voice crack. Not the pretty crying, not the photograph well kind, the real kind, the kind that happens when the floor moves. I let the silence sit for a moment. Here's what's going to happen, I said. Thomas Smith, my attorney, has already filed a motion to vacate the deed based on lack of legal capacity at the time of signing. Raymond Chu, who has 18 years in Adult Protective Services, has submitted a formal analysis to Delaware's Adult Protective Services Division. The motion to vacate will succeed. The lien on Grandma's house will be removed. The deed transfers back to her, fully protected in a trust that cannot be used as collateral without the trustee's consent. I paused. The trustee is me. Audrey. My father's voice was almost nothing. We're family. Family doesn't make a sick woman sign away her home while she's on painkillers, I said. Family doesn't bring in her son-in-law to co-sign the paperwork. I looked at the screen one last time. My mother, crying. The real kind now, the ugly kind, not the kind she performed at Christmas. My father, motionless, the rum drink forgotten. Vivian, staring at the empty chair where Marcus had been sitting, her hands very still on the table. Enjoy the cruise, I said. I ended the call. I put my laptop on the coffee table. I sat back on my couch. I looked at my plants on the windowsill. The pothos that had almost died twice. The snake plant that was indestructible. The small succulent my grandmother had given me last spring from her garden, still alive in a terracotta pot on the sill. By midnight, I had 79 missed calls. I did not answer any of them. In the weeks that followed, the things that needed to happen happened with the methodical momentum of a process that had been properly built. Thomas filed the motion to vacate in Delaware County Court on January 6th. Dr. Okafor's forensic opinion was submitted as Exhibit A. My grandmother's medical records from October, obtained with her written consent, which she had given lucidly and in full possession of herself on December 30th in Thomas's office with 2 witnesses, were submitted as Exhibit B. Raymond Chu's Adult Protective Services analysis, filed simultaneously with the State Division, had already triggered an independent investigation. Marcus's attorney contacted Thomas in January to discuss the loan. The conversation was brief. The loan had been secured with a fraudulently obtained signature on collateral. The borrower had no legal right to pledge. Marcus had co-signed a document of dubious validity. His options were to resolve it quietly or resolve it publicly. He resolved it quietly. The lien was removed from my grandmother's house on February 14th. I know the date because Thomas called me, and because I had been watching for it, and because my grandmother was at my apartment for dinner that evening. I had started driving to Wilmington every other Sunday, a practice I should have started years earlier, and I told her when Thomas called. She set down her fork. "It's mine again?" she said. "It's yours again," I said. "In a trust. I'm the trustee. Nobody can touch it." She looked at her hands on the table for a moment. "I knew you'd handle it," she said. "You knew before I did," I said. "I've been watching you for 32 years," she said. "You were always going to be the one." She picked up her fork and went back to her dinner, and I sat across from her in my studio apartment in Philadelphia and ate the meal I had made and thought about a piece of paper folded small, passed across a table without anyone seeing. Call Thomas Smith this week. She had been building toward this for years, quietly, without telling me, trusting that I would call and know what to do and see it through. She had been right. Vivian filed for divorce from Marcus in March. I know this not because she told me we have not spoken, but because it is a matter of public record in Newcastle County, and Thomas had set up a search alert at my request. I don't take satisfaction in it exactly. What I feel is closer to the specific grief of watching someone you were supposed to be close to discover they were being used by the same person who used your grandmother, and understanding that the discovery came too late to have prevented anything. My parents have called 46 times since the video call. I have spoken to them twice, both times briefly, both times to confirm that my grandmother was well and that the legal matters were proceeding correctly. Those conversations have been short, not cold, just short. My father said, on the second call, "I didn't know Marcus was planning to leave her." I said, "I believe you, but you knew about the deed." "I did." Silence. "I should have protected her," he said. "Yes," I said. "You should have." He didn't say anything else, but he stayed on the line for a moment before hanging up, and I stayed on the line too, and I think we both understood that the conversation conversation that actually needed to happen was one we weren't ready for yet, and might not be for a while. That's where things are. The Second Chances Grant, I named it that because it felt accurate, launched in April, a $2 million fund administered through a community foundation in Philadelphia, supporting workforce re-entry programs for women over 40 returning to the workforce after caregiving gaps. Thomas helped structure it. A program officer named Dr. Sandra Reyes, 12 years in philanthropic program management, the most organized person I have ever encountered, runs it. I still work at the Health Clinics Network. Part-time now, on the grant side, because the work matters, and I know how to do it, and the clinics can't afford to replace what I know. Thomas thinks this is very funny. I think it's the most normal part of my week. My grandmother came to the grant launch event in April. She wore the blue dress she saved for occasions. She sat in the front row and watched me speak. And afterward, when someone asked her if she was proud, she said, "I've been proud for 32 years. Today, I just got to show up for it." I had not cried at the lottery terminal. I had not cried on the video call. I had not cried at any point in this entire process, which Thomas had once observed in the tone of professional assessment was either a significant psychological resource or a significant psychological problem. I cried then, in the parking lot of the event venue, my grandmother's hand on my arm. "You gave me a $2 ticket," I said, which was not what I meant, but was the truest thing I could get out. She said, "I gave you the only thing I knew you'd actually use." By midnight on the night of the video call, my family had left 79 messages on a phone I was not answering. The same people who had handed me a $2 scratch-off with a smirk 2 weeks earlier, certain they had calibrated exactly what I was worth. They just got the number wrong.